Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found the topic of our last episode, how to maintain physical flexibility behind a desk, and tips to launch and promote your podcast, informative. If you are unable to join us and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on our YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. If you'd like to receive notifications on when our podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. Now let's learn a little bit about our guest today. James Woodall is the founder and CEO of Woodall Wealth Management, which is a registered investment advisory firm focusing on family stewards and family businesses to inspire and guide financial peace of mind for every generation. James graduated from Texas Tech University with a degree in international economics and finance, as well as earning his certified financial planning certificate from Southern Methodist University. So James, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Candy. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. Before I get into any questions that I have for you on the topic, I'd love for you to tell me just a little bit more about yourself and how did you get into wealth management?
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. So actually at Tech, I was originally in engineering and realized it wasn't for me after doing all the hard classes like Cal 2 and Cal 3 and all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, barely passed those. So I realized engineering wasn't for me. So that's when I moved to the international economics and finance area. And I actually took an agriculture class of all things about futures and commodities trading and fell in love with it. So after taking that class, I ended up getting a job at a large investment firm out here in Texas. And that's a nationally known firm. And went and worked there for quite a while, for about 7 or 8 years. And I basically kind of created my own curriculum about learning different roles in the operational side of the business. But I always found myself working with advisors, and while everyone else was intimidated to work with them, I was always fascinated. I learned a lot about them, learned what they did, what they didn't do, why. And one day I just said, hey, you know what? Like, I think I need to be a financial advisor myself. And so the second I said that, I wish I was joking, the stress like released from my back. And I was like, let's get after it. So from there, I said, okay, let's go be a financial advisor. I worked at the large shop, worked at a very small shop, and somewhere in between. And I realized, you know what? I want to do it my way and the way that I think is appropriate. So started to build Woodall Wealth Management, where we create family offices for those that may not necessarily have the $50 million for a family office. We're creating it for more of the average person out there.
Perfect. Well, for those who are listening, again, most of our audience is the smaller entrepreneur. A lot of them are probably thinking, my business someday is going to, be my retirement. I'm going to sell it. I'm going to have money that I need. So I don't really need to focus on retirement planning now. So why would you tell someone, no, you really should be thinking about it now?
So it's a very common conversation. I think I have at least once a week. The real reason why you want to think about it today and not tomorrow is the main factor is going to be time. So we all kind of keep hearing and keep preaching that the eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest.
Right.
Right. Well, that also works with saving for retirement. So when you're saving and investing for retirement, if you're using like an IRA or 401k or whatever have you, the longer you do that, the longer you have that run up. And on top of that, you can also sell your business as well, because what ends up happening is if you say, I'm going to sell my business for my retirement, one, that's awesome. I want to see that happen. That's great, right? That's part of a lot of why sometimes we do this. But also, when you sell it, you're going to pay a 30 to 50% capital gains tax on that sale. No one talks about that. So if you think I'm going to sell my business for $10 million, well, really, you're going to sell it for 5. Still a large sum of money, but then now you have all of this taxes that you got to still keep paying for that $5 million, because if you sell it early, that may not last 30 years in retirement. So that's why what we're doing is we help folks, create a retirement plan early on to, one, take gains out of the business in a tax efficient manner and save for retirement and give you even a better selling opportunity, because now you have a turnkey firm where someone can come in as a manager, maybe not a builder, and create a awesome firm.
hmm And I know there's quite a few different plans that someone could consider, as an entrepreneur, but do you want to just quickly touch on things that might be available for them, whether they're a sole owner or if they have employees, just so they know kind of the start, what to consider, and then of course have a deeper conversation about which one might be best for them?
Absolutely. So there's two main buckets you can think of. You have an IRA bucket and a 401k bucket. Now the pros and cons of each, they do blend together at times, but mainly an IRA is very easy and simple to set up, while a 401k typically has a lot more rules to set up as well.
hmm
So really depending on your situations can depend on what works best. So traditionally a normal IRA, if you're under 50 years old, $6,000 contribution. There's other types of IRAs that are out there, a simple IRA or a SEP IRA, where you can contribute up to $60,000 for just you. So it's great.
hmm
A little bit more rules involved, but great. While a 401k, you still have that $60,000 limit where the business can actually do profit sharing and take money out of the business and put it into you for your retirement. And that's
hmm
generally the direction I go for my folks that have anything more than 5 employees. Just
hmm
generally speaking, it's easier to manage. You can take out the profit sharing. It's a simpler standalone process.
Right.
So you have
And like
those
I
two
said,
main options.
there's so much more detail than just that too, which is a quick, simple overview. But like I said, I wanted you to touch on that just because some people don't even know.
Exactly. Yeah, the CFP exam, I think like 30% of it's retirement plan. So
hmm
we go over it a lot.
Exactly. Well, I wanted you also to touch on creating a legacy plan for their company. Again, we, talked about someone maybe selling their company, but, there's some legacy planning to do up to all of this, deciding, am I selling? Am I going to have employees continue running it when I don't want to work anymore? There's a lot that goes into it.
Absolutely. So when you're ready to leave the business, if you want to either like retire, be a figurehead, sell the business, or what have you, you always got to think about your employees as well and what can
hmm
happen. There's always that conversation where, what do I do with them?
hmm
So my brother's company is a great example. So he worked for a company where the owner started it, created it, and actually sold it back to the employees as an employee stock purchase plan, essentially. The employees were able to basically, a bank came in and said, hey, we're going to give you here's the value of your company. We're going to give this to you. Your employees can now buy into the company.
hmm
And that allowed the company to be employee ran. And in fact, it's actually been the most successful thing they've done because they were privately held. Employees own it. They're off to the races they go. Everyone was happy. You
hmm
also have the option, if you have family members looking to run it as well, to train them up to have that conversation. Hey, here's our mission statement as a family. Here's what we wanted to do. We want to operate through XYZ values. And then honestly, the hard part is you got to kind of, let give them the keys to the Ferrari. So that's always the hard part, but always be there for support. A firm I worked
hmm
at previously did that. And it's always hard. It's always very difficult, but you got to be there for support and let them run it. And then at this point, live the next chapter of your life.
hmm
And then, of course,
Right.
there's always the flat out selling it. Everyone, I wish you guys the best. Here's your severance, and off you go.
Right. Well, and some people may be thinking, I never thought of selling it to my employees, right? Maybe one key employee, right? If they don't have family who's interested, and maybe they wanted someone who's already involved to continue. But when you say like selling it to my employees, right, that seems a little more difficult. So how do they even consider setting that up?
So you definitely have to work with a bank. 90% of the time, you're working with the bank to do this. It's called a leveraged employee buyout. What will happen is you go and say, okay, hey, here's the value of my business. Here's why it's valuable due to these factors. Is there automation? Is it streamlined? Is it not hinging on just you, but everyone else
hmm
that's still there? That's where that value add comes into play. Then they'll say, hey, here's what we estimate it to cost. Oh, we're going to write you a check and say, hey, employees, literally, would you guys like to buy into the company? They can either buy into the retirement plans. They can say, hey, I want to buy stock options like you do a normal large company.
hmm
And from there, they'll actually walk through the process. And then you, as the business owner, may have to pay capital gains. And this is where the kind of the beauty of working with an advisor and definitely a CPA, of course, during the situation, is you can actually go and say, like, I'm going to take all of my gains. Let's use round numbers to say $1 million. So if I don't want to take $1 million, I don't want to pay taxes on $1 million today. There's actually something that came up during the 2017, Secure Act, which was they called opportunity zones. So opportunity zones lets you take your profits, immediately invest them into an area that could be very local to you. In fact, there's one down the road from where I'm living today. You can invest into there, and if you hold those assets for 10 years, you get that money back plus all the gains tax free. And then if you hold on to it for a little bit less, there's definitely a sliding scale of what you get back tax free. So you can kind of help your community, help your employees, help yourself as well, because you've planned down the road, because you have your retirement plan ready to live on when you sold it, and then you get your large capital gain to come in tax free down the road.
Well, and I've heard opportunity zones more on like the employment side too, right? If you're hiring someone that is in this distressed area, right, there may be some benefits. Or, if you hire someone that's in a category that's had a hard time getting employment, you might get some benefits on that. But in terms of actually investing into assets or something, which you happen to mention, so could you maybe touch a little bit more on that? Like, how do they even find the opportunity zones in, maybe their local area? And what are the kind of things that they can invest in, to actually qualify for that?
Definitely. For the most part that I've experienced, it's been real estate. So there's a few ways to do this. The place to start is honestly how I kind of explored them and learned about them, is I just Googled opportunity zone near me. That's literally what I did. And there's a handful of places you'll find it. Each state has their own website that will go over each of the zones. And they'll show you in detail what exactly they are, who's managing that area. And then what you'll start to find and what you'll explore is there's different companies that are either operating as like a mutual fund or a private equity, where they're saying, hey, you know what? Put your money in here. We're going to lock it up for X amount of time. And then this is our estimated return. Here you go. And these were very popular, especially on the real estate side when interest rates were so low. So I'm certainly curious to see what's going to change lately. What I've noticed as well is, depending on where you look in the country, trailer parks are actually an opportunity zone I've seen every state. That's been a very interesting one as well. And if you can find a way, work with somebody that's a professional and work with a CPA, you can actually be very tax efficient in your gains and how you take them back, and basically living a great life in retirement with minimal tax gains.
And are you aware of maybe investing into a business that might be in an opportunity zone that is not, a real estate investment, that maybe that would count as well? So if we, find, we love this cafe, it's in our area, but, they need some investment to continue running, right? We know a lot of restaurants have been hit, especially hard. Is that something that can be considered?
I don't know. I haven't come across that yet, but I'm gonna tell you right now, after we do this talk, I'm gonna go figure it out. That'd actually be amazing. That'd be very interesting. I'm sure that any local chamber of commerce is gonna have that information. That would actually be really cool. I hope that exists. I know angel investing is certainly out there, but that's not the opportunity zone benefit. But
But
I'm gonna have to
something
look that
to
up. I
look
haven't heard that one
into.
yet. Yeah, that's actually
Find
really
the
cool.
roles.
Yeah. And I'll be
I
honest with
just,
you, I have a mentor of mine. He's on multiple board of directors because he has amazing experience and he does it for free and he offers his advice. That's interesting. I'll have to look that up.
well, and I think, this whole topic of the opportunity zone is interesting because, like you said, I mean, you're doing it for one reason, right? To avoid this huge capital gains tax. But also, the whole point of an opportunity zone is helping in an area that is struggling compared to other areas. So being able to invest in that area however you can, whatever the opportunity is, it's like a win-win, right? It's going to help you, but it's also going to help that neighborhood.
It truly does. So the good stories here in Dallas, there's a neighborhood called Deep Ellum. Deep Ellum used to be a very dangerous place. And it's certainly having some of its issues again at night right now, but it's gone from a place where when I first moved up here, there must have been 5 buildings, and you didn't go there at night. It was just a place you did not go, to where now it's a vibrant. If you're coming to Dallas, you go to Deep Ellum for the food. It's amazing, great shopping, great nightlife, and the streets, the construction, the infrastructure has all been designed and built from funding through opportunity zones.
Mhm.
So it does do a great impact. You can see it happen in quick and real time. It's pretty impressive.
Nice. So you talked earlier too about selling your business when you're ready to retire and get out of it. And one of the options is selling to your employees. But what about having employee ownership in your company before you even retire? Like, is there a benefit to that? How would someone consider setting that up? And what would they even consider like a percentage? Like how do you touch on that to educate them?
Yeah, so that's a great conversation. So let's start with why that's so important. So I used to run a few leadership programs. We worked on those at some of these previous firms. And the three main things that come up when it comes to working as humans is autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I basically comes down to, am I getting paid enough? Okay, I can't throw enough money at you, but how do I get that out of my employers and my employees? So it's
Mm-hmm.
autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And one of the ways to create mastery and purpose is actually giving ownership of the company to your employees. So there's quite a few ways to do this. I believe every state's going to be slightly different. So I'll speak in exceptionally general terms.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just because it's all different everywhere, but very
Mm-hmm.
generalized is you can have it, let's say a firm, let's say a partnership. Let's say you're a partnership and you say, you know what, I'm going to be the general partner, I'm the guy in control, but I'm going to start giving away shares of my business or my partnership to my employees to where you can still have the control, but your employees still get the benefits of profit sharing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a good way to get that started. Also, you have employee stock purchase plans. Generally, you're going to see that in larger publicly traded corporations, but you can still do the same thing like an employee stock option plan, which
Mm-hmm.
is still very similar. One's made for retirement, one's meant for more day to day. And what you can do is you say, hey, you can buy into shares of the company. You take that profit in your pocket. That's for you. And then you start saying, hey, you got to hold these shares for 5 years to be fully vested in owning this portion of the company. And
Mm-hmm.
you can certainly set it up in a way to where you can keep the control, the management, the decision making, but you can also give employees the benefit of owning part of the company that they work at.
Mm-hmm. So someone might be thinking, right, okay, so I sell or give shares or however it works to my employees and they get a certain, percentage of the profit. How does that actually work? What if I'm not profitable or what if I'm super profitable? Is it, that certain percentage no matter what you make or what you lose? Or is there something in there that just says I can give them like a certain amount of profit each year? Like, how does that work?
So multiple different ways. So we think it from let's start with the 401k side of a profit sharing plan. There's actually an extremely strict calculation that has to be done. And there's no debate. That's why the plan is able to be available and work is through a formula created. If you take X percent of profit based on age, tenure, salary, variable, that's going to be the profit sharing that goes to your employees. Or you can do a flat 10% of whatever your pay is, et cetera, whatever percentage pay that goes to them. On the other side of it, on the employee stock side of it, it really can be however you want it to be set up. And if you don't have a profit, you don't have a profit to share. So they're not going to get anything. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you give them more shares to keep them attained or retained as employees. You come through different options that way. That's why I generally like what's the most tax efficient way to grow my business and my employees. It's not always going to be writing a check for a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
There may be other ways to kind of keep them around, having a vesting schedule, having vesting in those shares. Hey, you're going to get more shares this year of the company.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to do it as well. So every situation on that side, on the taxable side, you could say, the non-retirement side, is unique in the way you want to design it.
Mm-hmm. So I know you also have a description of what's called the Four Horsemen. So I would love to know what are your Four Horsemen and why, are they important?
Absolutely. So the Four Horsemen, I wish I could take credit for this. This comes from my mentor at SMU, Brian Jackson. Because of the Four Horsemen of Financial Planning. And I like the Four Horsemen because it should be the voice of doom when it comes down to this is the four things that you need. And it's in this order, and we'll kind of go back to why, is you have to have 3 to 6 months of retirement savings. If you're an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur, I'm sorry, not retirement savings, of your emergency savings. And if you're an entrepreneur, I typically say 8 to 12 months. We
Mm-hmm.
go through some pretty highs and lows. We're currently going through those right now. So number one is having the emergency savings. Number two is eliminating credit card debt. I tell everyone, no matter how good of an advisor, an investor I think I am, I can't consistently beat paying off 20% APR, right? I just can't do it. I wish I could. So getting rid of that debt. Then from there, it's actually protecting your income for disability. So especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're solo and you can't work, you start losing that income. And then all of a sudden you start using your credit cards, start paying things off. How do you pay off your credit cards? It's your emergency savings. And it creates that tumbling effect. And then the fourth is then starting to save for retirement. Because like we spoke about earlier on under the podcast was if you don't have that retirement savings and that time to grow it, even as little as you can put in, but to grow it over that long period of time, you're going to find yourself in a position where you're going to sell your business. You don't want to, or you may have to, and you're not ready. For example, if a barber is a great example, you start having carpal tunnel, you literally can't cut hair. And that actually disability won't cover that. So you got to start leaning back on your retirement savings and sell a business when you're ready. And those are the four horsemen in that order.
Well, and it's so important. I try to tell people this too, is, that, like you said, that credit card debt is, not very good to have, like I said, the high expense that you have to pay for interest. But I also try to tell people, if you want to use it for your points or something, because a lot of people are like, well, I'll get cash back, I'll get points. Great. Then pay it off every month, right? So that you don't carry that debt. And, like you said, having that emergency cash available then too. So if something happens, maybe that month you don't have as much available to pay that off, but now you have a little bit extra you can pull out just to get it, off where you're not paying that high interest. So like I said, everything kind of feeds on itself, but it helps you as well if you can maintain that. So I love that description that you gave, because it's so important to stay just, into a great financial position by following those, have the cash available, pay off the debt, plan for your future, all of that too.
Exactly. And when we always talk about the emergency savings thing, it's always fascinating because everyone thinks, oh, I can handle my, car breaks down or gotta get new tires. Tires are expensive now. Just dealt with that the other day, but it's not the one thing that gets you. It's the two things back to back when you're not prepared. That's what really trips you up. And then you're chasing yourself and you may be chasing that credit card debt for years.
Right.
And it's always eating away at you. So that's why it's pretty hard and fast rules. And once you have that foundation set, it's really hard to shake it.
I talked to someone once who said, well, my husband always gets a bonus at the end of the year, and then we always get a tax refund. So I'll just have extra cash when that happens. And I remember telling her, you can't depend on the bonus. Something might happen with the business, and you can't always depend on a refund because tax law changes. So if you don't change anything along with the tax law changes, you may not end up with, the extra amount coming back to you at the end of the year, or when you file as well too. And so I think sometimes people might have plans that they're going to get that cash, but it doesn't work out the way they think.
Exactly. And now that we think about it, with interest rates now going up, your savings matters a little bit more because you used to it's a tax-free loan to the IRS and you're at their whim. And it used to not be the world's biggest issue. I even told my clients, like, hey, look, I get it. Enough makes life a little easier for you. I understand. But now it's at the point where we're trying to get a penny back from the IRS, where we pay a penny. That's my mission. That's my personal goal is I want a penny back or I pay a penny. And that's why I pay just the right amount of taxes over the course of the year. But it's hard. It's hard to do. Like you just said, the tax law is constantly changing. I think it changes weekly at this point. Trying to keep up with everything. I looked at more IRS publications as of late than anyone should. So if you want to know about 396 pages of IRS Pub 550, you let me know.
No, there are always changes. And like I said, at least once a year, there's a change, which I always tell my client to go see your CPA, late October, early November, have a discussion before the year is over. So you can really plan and see, do I need to pay in more? Do I need to, take extra expense, this year? Do I need to, what is your situation? And really have that conversation to properly plan and make sure, like you said, you don't end up with a big, especially if you owe a big amount, that could really hit your cash flow again as well. So don't count on all of that.
Yeah, it's like, should I do a Roth conversion this year? Or this year in particular, the last 6 months of the year, they upped the mileage rebate. So,
Mm-hmm.
how does that affect you? What's that going to look like? Where does it look like in your situation? So that's why we partner with a good CPA firm, and it makes a world of difference for our clients.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the last question, that I have before we get into, any offer that you may have would be, we were talking about selling your business and different ways that you could sell your business. And hopefully you don't have to sell it too early because, you have a disability or something. But if someone is thinking of selling their business now, what is a good time, to know, like, yes, it's a great time to sell now, or I need to wait 5 years. Like, do you have any tips on that to make sure that they're selling it at the right time?
Ooh, that's a great question. Let's look at industry trends. So industries are cyclical. Let's use oil, for example, maybe a good time to sell an oil service company. Because even though we have political headwinds with it, I'm in Texas, so pretty familiar with oil.
Mm-hmm.
You may have political headwinds. There's certainly not worldwide headwinds. There's tailwinds, people that are pushing these oil services company to really start drilling. And that may be a good time. The other time is interest rates as well. So with interest rates that were historically low, and they still are, they're still very low in the grand scheme of things, that it might be a good time to sell your business because money's cheap. If I can spend more per month on paying back a principal than interest, I'm going to pay more for it. Housing is a great example of it.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is, honestly, if you're ready, can you do another 5 years? Are you ready to sell the business and fully let go? And is there
Mm-hmm.
people willing to buy? I know now it's probably a hard time with inflation going up a lot. In fact, I did my personal inflation numbers today, and it was 18%, which was pretty jaw-dropping. But certainly, as a guy, that kind of makes sense too. So where are your headwinds at? And then your industry, whatever industry you're in better than we do. So you're going to know the right time to buy it. Are people willing to invest and
Mm-hmm.
see what's out there? And then trying to sell it also. Certainly work with a professional valuation firm. That is a third party. And at times it can hurt your feelings because, hey, we think our businesses are worth more than they are. But listen to them,
Mm-hmm.
and if they're really good, they'll show you the gaps. Maybe you can find that deficiency and solve for that in the next 2-3 years, and therefore sell for more when the time's right.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it may be more valuable than you think because you're using your business to pay for things that technically really aren't business expenses. So maybe the value is even more.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So I know we've covered a lot of information. I know we're just basically touching the very top of this topic. So there's, I'm sure, a lot more that people will need to research and find out. But I would love for you to just say if you have an offer that you would like to share with our listeners.
Definitely. So I have a part of my website. It's under guides and checklists. It's free information. There's about 9 or 10 of them today. Hopefully I can add a little bit more. There's no cost or obligation for them, but it's just free information to go and read. It's under woodallwealthmanagement.com, and I believe it's /guides and checklists. And you'll certainly see if you go to the website, you can't miss it. Great stuff in there to read. I think knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can use that knowledge, you can certainly make some changes and hopefully do a lot better on with your financial future.
Perfect. And is there any other way that they can find you other than your website? Do you have anything on social media, or do you want to share a phone number?
Yeah, so I'm just literally today starting up multiple social media pages. So Woodall Wealth Management on Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm starting a Facebook group, so I may be calling it, what did I write down? Creating and Sustaining Wealth Facebook group. I guess now that I put that out there, that's going to be the name. So you're the first to hear it. But also just give me a phone call. It's 214-281-4496. 4496. There we go. Tell everyone, just give me a phone call, have a cup of coffee. There's no cost or obligation or anything like that. I like meeting new folks. So it's always good to have a cool conversation.
Well, thank you, James, for being a guest on my show and sharing your expertise. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Candy. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know we did a lot real quick, so it was great chatting with you.
And that we did cover a lot of information today, but for you as a listener, I hope you found this topic interesting and that it did answer some of your questions about planning for retirement as a business owner and the vast different topics we did touch on briefly. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to James at any of the informational links that he's sharing, or send us a message at media@abandp.com. I hope you can join us for our next episode, how to get clients to show up for appointments or sales calls. And please remember, you can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. You can find the podcast posted on multiple favorite podcast platforms, including iTunes, Google, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And would you please share our show with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? I'd really appreciate your support. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.